Welcome back. Today, part 2 of the interview with Dave Albin, the Firewalker. Dave believes that fear for most people is forget everything and run. For him, he teaches his students face everything and rise. We pick up where we left off.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performance Podcast
with your host, Thor Conklin.
Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
You have so many opportunities coming at you all the time. I know Google, you've done events there. They keep calling. How do you determine what to say yes to when you have all these opportunities?
Whoa, that's a great question. Well, when Google calls, you never say no. That's my organizing principle on that one. And it was interesting because when we originally started with that, they wanted to do a firewalk. And they wanted, and what they had was a graduating class of 138 executives. And so that graduating class, they wanted me to come in that morning and do it. Well, I don't do firewalks during the day. It's too risky. As I said earlier, there's 3 ways to do a firewalk. There's safe, safer, and safest. So we don't do them during the day. I do them at night because I need to see the color of those coals. And it's obviously, 10 times more effective when you're standing there looking at them and they're glowing red hot. There's no question. So anyway, what happened was we ended up giving them the alternative, and they did a glass walk instead. That was 2015. And then they called us back here a couple months ago. And then we went back and did it again. And then when I was out there here 2 weeks ago, they went ahead and scheduled for 2017. Well, this is really a great question. I'm sitting here thinking about it, and I really have a hard time saying no because I know what it does. I know what's going to happen to that person, with a firewalk or a glass walk. But I also have to recognize that if I spread myself too thin, I can't serve at a high level because there's only so much I can do.
Yeah. Hence the procrastination.
Hence the procrastination.
Procrastination can be hidden in, I've got a lot on my plate. I'm executing all over the place here, but I just feel like I'm procrastinating on this event or this project. All it is I don't have any more time for that.
And I'm also devaluing myself, which I was taught by one of my mentors. You can't do that. Once you get to the place where you are, you have to know what your self-worth is, and you don't want to step down off of that, because but at the same time, what happens when your local community comes to you and they say, hey, we're the Western Youth Group here in Boone, North Carolina, and we have 25 kids, and these kids are going through hard times, and there's challenges at home, and so they come here and they're able to, get away from that infestation, if you will. And now they come to me and say, hey, will you come do a board break? Well, I can't say no to that. I just can't. There is a really fine line. I was dealing with somebody here recently where I did say no. They were kind of beating me up on price, and I finally said, look, I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to have to decline this. And so I think that's, for me, if I detect that they're, trying to beat me up, it's kind of insulting, number one. And number two, it's like going to a brain surgeon and you seek out the number one brain surgeon in the world because you need that person. And then you go to this person and you say, well, I know you bid this brain surgery at $185,000, but is there any way you'd do it for 60?
Yeah. My stuff, I've got 2 rates, free and quite expensive. Because I'm even going to, like this podcast, this is free. You can listen all day long. But if you want me to come speak to your group, it's going to cost you a bunch of money because I value my time.
Yes. And I think your mentor and my mentor, or at least one of our mentors, is the same. I think we're talking about our dear friend Joe Williams and his Speakers Boot Camp, because that's one of the things Joe teaches. You've got to get real centered and focused on what your value is and what you bring to the table. Yeah. And so I get that. Yeah. And at the same time, it's you also have to make sure that, when you're ready, standing back of that curtain and you get ready to walk out on that stage, it's showtime. So one of the things I've learned, and I think you do this exact same thing, and that is, we go out there on the stage and we have a conversation with our audience. We're not out there trying to impress them. We're not out there to make ourselves, let our ego take over. It's about having a conversation and serving at a high level.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, again, it comes back to that procrastination, because it's been my number one challenge.
What would you try if you knew you could not fail?
One of my favorite questions. I ask this. It's one of the first things I say at a firewalk. Create a firewalking academy so that I could get out to even more companies and more people. Right now, I'm doing everything myself, so I'm limited in that. I guess in my future, it's not right now, because I'm not ready to do that. I've got to get these other things in place first.
Yeah.
But that would probably be it. It would be a Firewalk Academy where I could bring in men and women who are either, HR people or people within their company who could go back to their company and use the same metaphoric experiences that I'm doing myself, and/or create a community of firewalking instructors, if you will, that could go do a firewalk through our company when I'm doing one. And again, if I'm doing a firewalk the first week of October, then I'm booked.
Right.
So having others to be able to back me up would be a great thing for me and my company.
Good. Who holds you accountable?
My son. He's been absolutely awesome at that. There's also accountability in the 12-step program as far as that goes, because when we share openly, we get feedback. But I hold myself pretty highly accountable. I've learned to do that as well. I know Michael Jordan did the same thing. His number one competitor was himself, so he held himself to a very high standard. But my son's really good about it. He's got the courage to say, "Hey, Dad, can we talk about something?" And he did it at a young age. One time I told him I was going to go out and we'd throw the football out in the back 40 on our farm, and then I didn't do it that day. And he came to me the next day and he said, "Hey, Dad, I just wanted to let you know I was really looking forward to throwing the football around yesterday, and it didn't happen." And it cut me like a knife. I praised him big time, and so he learned a lot of pleasure. He got a lot of pleasure out of me telling him that I wanted him to do that to me for the rest of my life. So I said, if you ever see me not operating at a point that serves you and this family at a high level, please come to me and keep me accountable.
Nice. What are some of the core beliefs that you have that support you?
Anything is possible. You can accomplish anything when you put your mind to it. I've seen, I've partnered myself, Thor, with a lot of really awesome keynote speakers. So that way, if a corporation comes to me and they say, "Hey, we want to do a firewalk, but we have this theme that we want to stay with," I have them as a backup. For example, I have a guy, Billy J. Brown, and Billy's an amazing, amazing man. And he's here he is, a guy that was burnt very badly when he was 2 years old. He was coming home from a family vacation, and he was in a station wagon, and he was 2 years old. He's in the back with his cousin and his sister, and then his aunt and uncle were in the back seat, mom or dad in the front seat. Long story short, a tractor trailer driver hit him when they had to slow down going into this turn, and it knocked him into a ravine. The car flipped over. Mom and dad got out. His aunt and uncle got out. His sister and his cousin got out. The car broke into flames. And now my mom is trying to argue with the truck driver to get the fire extinguisher to try to put the fire out. Billy's caught in the back of this station wagon. And, here he is, 2 years old. Interesting, the truck driver won't give his mother the fire extinguisher. She's arguing with him, and he basically said, "I'm not going to let you waste the fire extinguisher because who's ever in that car is dead." Now, come to find out, this truck driver had been up for 2 days and had found to be on amphetamines. And he ended up not giving him the fire extinguisher. Well, again, long story short, fire department shows up, they get Billy out, and he's got third-degree burns on 60% of his body. So he grew up very challenging in school. Then one day, he decides to go to a Tony Robbins seminar. And at that seminar, here's a young man who had been horribly burnt. Painfully burnt. And the next thing you know, he's doing a firewalk to overcome everything that had happened to him being burnt in a fire.
Yeah. I know Billy. He's an amazing guy.
Isn't he? Oh. And so, that's when he wrote the book, Rising Above the Ashes. And, he's got a beautiful wife and kids, and, he travels around the world speaking to schools and high schools and sports teams. And so there's the guy. There's a guy that, can add a tremendous amount of value on the stage because of his personal accomplishments and how he took an absolute tragedy, if you will, and turned it into a very, very positive cause and effect. And now team that up with me in a Firewalk. That's a powerful, powerful experience.
Yeah, he is such a happy, fulfilled man.
Indeed he is. And that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah, and the results from that fire are still very evident.
Yes. Yeah, you can see, he's, I believe it's his left hand is gone, and his right hand is kind of shaped like a paw, almost like a hoof, if you will.
Yeah.
And so, but today, like you said, a man that's living a life very fulfilled. And that's really the key, because you and I, we meet so many people that have achieved at a high level financially or professional athlete. I know you did a podcast here earlier. That's why I'm so humbled to be here talking to you today, Fran Tarkington. And here's a guy, a quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, who I hold in very high esteem. He was a class act on the field, and he was a class act off the field. But he's a guy that not only did he achieve at a high level, but he figured out the art and science of achievement and fulfillment. And I think that's really the key, because, to me, to achieve at a high level, but you don't feel fulfilled, to me is failure.
Yeah.
That's total failure. I mean, come on. So that's really kind of the key. And, that's one of the other things that firewalking does, because when it's your time, I jokingly say, when it's your moment and you step up to those coals and you're ready to do that firewalk, your shit shows up. It's showtime, man. And that's when that little voice in your head, takes off, and it starts telling you who you are. A lot of that, fear is a liar, as we know. And so that's where, again, it comes back to that forget everything and run, or face everything and rise.
I love that. Love that. Can I steal that?
It's all yours. I stole it from somebody. So yeah, okay.
I like it. When you wake up in the morning, how do you decide what you're going to do?
Well, I'm big on rituals. I believe that, the first thing I do every day, my mother taught it to me, is I make my bed. Now that may sound, real simple, but it's a discipline, and it works. And so, and then, like the second thing that I do is I hydrate. I'm really big on hydration, and I'm really big on drinking the best and the highest quality water I can get my hands on. I learned a long time ago, Thor, that people don't die of old age, they die of dehydration. And so, for me, hydration is everything. And so I've studied water. I'm real fluent in understanding the power of water and the importance of drinking the best, cleanest, alive water that you can drink. I'm here in the Appalachian Mountains. I have a well, and my water's coming right out of the mountain. So when it comes out of my tap, it's alive. Then I run it through a machine, and I alkaline and I ionize that water. So again, I drink a lot of water, and I drink good, high quality water, and I would encourage everybody to do the same. It's one of the things I teach in my seminar. If you don't know the quality of your water, then you need to start doing some research. Bottled water is not good. So you need to find either find spring water that you can get to it where the water's still alive. And if you can run it through a machine of some kind and alkaline it and ionize it, it will clean your body. It's the number one thing.
What machine do you use?
There's a company called Air Water Life. It's a great company. In fact, the CEO, the guy that started the company, was the CEO for Hughes Aircraft. And so they were building helicopters for years. And one day he decided he wanted to do something different. And so he literally went and took a company. There's a machine out there made by Kagan. It's a multi-level marketing company. And the challenge with the machine is that it's very expensive. It's like $4,000 or $5,000. So he took the machine, he took it apart. He's an engineer, and he went, "You got to be kidding me! I can build this for a fraction of the cost. So you can get a nice machine for under $1,000." And I will tell you this, very well could be one of the number one investments you'll ever make. It's not a network marketing company, but I'm so passionate about the water and the machines. I promote them big time. And so you can go to www.waterbydave.com and you can pick up one of their machines. And they're absolutely phenomenal. And they're easy to hook up. And so you've got a couple of different alkaline settings. And I will tell you, if you're not used to drinking alkaline water and you start drinking it, believe me, two things will happen. Number one, you're going to pee a lot, and you're going to pee very yellow in the beginning. Well, that's a good sign, because now the alkalinity and the ionizing part of it is pulling all the toxins out of your bloodstream.
Wow. Well, we have the fire guy on. We didn't think we were going to get advice on water, but thank you.
Well, it is. And interestingly enough, the events that I'm doing up here, I don't know if you know this, but I opened up to the general public. Firewalking had never been open to the general public. If you wanted to do a firewalk, you had to go to a Tony Robbins seminar, T. Harv Eker, or one of these guys. And so we opened up this year. We did our last firewalk last Memorial Day weekend. And so now we're calling it the Fire and Water Experience.
That's awesome. What is the best advice you've ever received?
Well, off the top of my head, I was given great advice when I got sober that day. And the advice was, if you'll do what we've done, you'll get what we've gotten. If you go home and don't drink one day at a time, your whole life will transform. And it'll get so good that you can barely stand it.
Now, that's the good advice you've been given, or the best advice. Tell us the worst advice you've ever been given. You didn't know it was bad advice, and you actually took it.
From the father that raised me. I was adopted, so my aunt and uncle adopted me. I guess maybe some of the worst advice I was ever given is I had a paper route, Thor. And so back in those days, how you got information. Now, I'm talking about 1965, 1966, 67 maybe. Every afternoon, I would go drive, get my bicycle and ride over to, I'd ride it over underneath the San Diego Freeway, pick up my papers and deliver them. Well, I was also responsible for selling subscriptions. So when someone new would move into the neighborhood, I'd go knock on their door and sell them a subscription. So one day I knock on this guy's door and I sell him a subscription, and I'm telling him that I can earn a trip to San Francisco if I get 7 subscriptions. Well, sure enough, I got the 7 and I won. Well, I went back the following month, because back then you had to go door to door with all your customers and collect the money and then turn them into what was your den mother, if you will, who was the lady that took care of all the paper boys. And I don't remember any girls doing it. It was all boys at that time. And so I knock on this guy's door that's been a new customer. And so I knock on the door and he says, hey, how you doing? Very enthusiastic guy, very warm, very welcoming. And he said, hey, by the way, did you win the contest? And I said, yeah, I did. In fact, I go on my trip next month. And he goes, oh, that's great. Well, come on in. So I go into his house and I'm standing there talking to him. And he said, hey, by the way, you made a commission when you signed me up, right? Did you make something for, and I didn't even know what commission meant. So he kind of had to explain it. And I said, yeah, I got paid, whatever it was. I think I made $2.80. And he said, how much did you make on that next month? And I said, excuse me, I don't know what you mean. He said, well, do you make a commission the following month of you signing me up on the first month? And he said, did you make any residual income? And I'm like, come on, I'm 12 years old. I'm 11 years old. I have no idea what this guy's talking about. But the answer was no. And he said, oh, well, that's too bad. And so he said, let me ask you something. Does your mom have a washing machine? Because back in those days, not every mom in the neighborhood had a washing machine. Some of them actually, they would buy one and share it neighborly. There'd be 3 or 4 neighbors that would all go over to one house and share the washing machine and then hang their clothes in the backyard, right? And so, but my mom had one. And he said, well, what laundry detergent does she use? Does she use Tide? And I said, yes. And he said, well, he goes, let me show you something. So he brings out this kit and he starts demonstrating this soap. And what he's telling me and explaining to me is that this soap is 5 times better than Tide, and it's half the cost. And so he basically said, what would happen if you showed this to your mom? If you could show her a way to use a better product and she saved 50%, do you think she'd be interested? The light bulb went off. And he said, and then she would buy this from you, but she would buy it every month because, right, she's going to use, she buys a box. She's going to use it in the month of June. She's going to need more in July, right? And I said, yeah. Well, for some reason, Thor, I got it. It made total sense to me. He said, so do you think you'd be interested in doing something like this? And then he showed me all these other products that he had as well, these cleaning products. I'm like, I get it, right? I'm just like, the light bulb goes off. And he said, would you be interested? And I said, absolutely. He said, well, all you need to do is buy a kit. And I went, okay, well, how much is the kit? He said, $11. And I said, well, I don't have $11. And he said, well, what's your dad do? I said, he's an officer in the military. He said, well, why don't you go home and talk to your father and get the $11, come back, I'll get you the kit, and I can get you started. Because basically what he said was, so let me ask you something else. He said, if your mom buys this from you monthly, you'll make, I think it was, I don't know, $1.95 every month that just she buys it from me. And so he said, now, do you have any of your buddies' moms that have a washing machine? And I said, yeah. He said, well, if your mom bought this from you in month number 1, then month 2, you don't have to sell her anymore. You're just automatically going to make income from that purchase. But if you go talk to your buddy's mom and now she buys it in July, in August, you're going to make a commission off your mom and you're going to make a commission off your buddy's mom. And then in August, you talk to 2 more. And then in September, you go out in your paper route, you start talking to all your clients. Next thing you know, you get another 4. So now you got 4, 2, 6, and 2 before. You have 8 customers who are buying this soap from you times $1.95. So you know what I mean? So I'm freaking out. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is insane. I mean, this is crazy. And so I go home and now I'm waiting for my dad to walk into the front door. And so I made my first mistake. My dad walks in and I jump him. I'm like, Dad, I got to talk to you. And he's like, what about it? I go, oh, Dad, this is really important. I'm like, Dad, I want to sell soap. He's like, what? He goes, Dad, I want to sell soap. I mean, it's really great soap and Mom will buy it. And then, my buddy's mom and then all my paper route moms will buy it. And I'm going to make all this money. And I'm going on and on and on and on and on. And all of a sudden my dad had heard enough, right? Now my dad he's the type of guy, he's inside the box. He never steps outside of the box, ever. First of all, he's a mechanical engineer and he's an electrical engineer. My dad could take a tank, take the transmission out, rebuild it, and reinstall it. Okay, so that's the kind of mechanical mind he had. And he's like, David, stop. He just cut me off. He said, look, you've got a paper route. You sell flowers on the street corner. You're working across the street at the golf course. You're a caddy. You're painting the little stripes on the balls. You're working on. You're driving the golf cart thing on the driving range and picking up the balls. You're working as a dishwasher. You got all these really great jobs. Stick with what works, and that was his advice. Stick with what works. And of course, what I was talking about with him back in 1966 would have been an entry point with Amway.
Yeah. Distributor number 2.
Exactly. Yeah. Come to find out, yeah, I'd have been like two links under Dexter Yeager, who I believe is the number 1 Amway distributor.
Great story.
Yeah.
Well, this leads into this question. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell that paper boy?
Follow your heart, follow your dream, follow your passion, and follow what you love. I learned it. Do what you love, and you never have to work a day in your life. And that's where I am. I'm 62 years old, and I'm living my dream. I'm totally driven by love and passion. That's what I would tell my younger self. Now, not that my life didn't turn out spectacular based on that experience, but again, that's what I would, I would tell myself, because again, my parents were influenced by the industrial age, right? So it was, get a job and get your benefits and work 40 hours a week and work for 30 years and then, get your retirement.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't happen today.
Yeah. My father was the same way. And I remember I was about 24 years old. I was making more money than he was. And it was like, wow. But that was kind of a mindset back then. It was, you get a job, you retire from that job, you get a gold watch, and you get a pension.
Yeah, you get a gold watch.
Yeah, and that's literally how it worked. He was a Navy serviceman as well. So, yeah, very, very similar story. And he was always by the book, and it was play it safe. And I was like, nope, not doing that.
In fact, do you have time for one really quick story?
Of course.
So my dad comes home one day from work, and he's got 3 officers with him. He's got 2 colonels and a major, and then there's himself, right? So I'm a young boy, and here comes all this brass, and the next thing I know, they're sitting in the living room and they're having a conversation, and they're talking. And I'm not allowed in the living room, but I'm around the corner in the hallway, and I'm listening to everything. And so they're talking about all this business stuff, and some of it I don't understand at all. And the next thing I know, my dad kind of slams his hands on the table, and he's like, boom. And he goes, this is bullshit, gentlemen. He said, let me tell you something. There's no way in hell somebody's just going to walk in and buy a hamburger, French fries, and a Coke. It'll never happen, gentlemen. This meeting is over. And so, of course, what my dad was talking about was one of the very first, all four of those officers going in with, one of the very first McDonald's franchises. And so years later, right, Thor, we'd be driving around, and we'd drive by a McDonald's, and I swear to God, I think they did this for my dad's benefit. There was a sign up in the old days, and it said, 27 million sold, right?
Yes.
Right? And I'd say, hey, Dad, look, no way in hell. He'd be like, shut up, boy. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess we had a similar upbringing.
We did.
So, Dave, share with our listeners how they can get a hold of you and get involved in some of the stuff that you're up to.
Easiest way is to go to our website, which is firewalkadventures.com. So if you're out there in the country or somewhere abroad, that'll take you to our website. And then if you're local here in North Carolina and you want to come up and you want to be an incredible experience and experience our fire water experience, which is just absolutely awesome, you can go to Boone, which is Boone, firewalk.com.
Awesome. Well, we are at the part of the show that we call the Rapid Fire Execution Round.
Alrighty.
And being a mountain man, you're familiar with firearms. So in 1873, Cattleman produced a .22 revolver. It had 12 shots. You're going to have 12 questions to answer in under 2 minutes. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Your top priority in life.
My family.
Most useful app you're currently using.
Uber.
How old were you when you knew you could be successful?
12.
Name the best decision in business you've ever made.
To open my Firewalk business.
Name the skill you have that you're most proud of.
My belief system.
Name one thing you did poorly last year, but do better this year.
Took massive action on my business.
One thing that you were told that turned out to be the most true.
That I could lead a life of sobriety.
Name one decision in business you wish you'd never had.
Doing business with a specific individual that I won't talk about here.
Add me to that list. Not that you and I are doing business, but I had a similar experience. Name one thing you'd like to learn in the next 6 months.
Spanish.
Name your top 2016 goal.
Do $500,000 in volume.
Most meaningful book you've ever read.
Think and Grow Rich.
Person you trust to tell you the truth no matter what, even if it's hard to hear.
My son and daughter.
Your favorite thing to do when you're not at work.
Enjoy the great outdoors.
Awesome. You survived the execution round.
Man, I was sweating bullets.
No pun intended.
No pun intended.
What parting advice do you have for our listeners?
Well, it would be, do the thing you fear, and the death of fear is certain. I've seen so many people deprive themselves of the quality of life because they're allowing fear to take so much away from them. It would literally be attack fear, understand what it's used for. It's there to save your life. It's there to keep you alive, but just don't allow it to become your jailer. And so for me, that's really the deal, because once you can deal there, and you know what, if you look at anybody that's successful, take a guy like yourself, guess what? At some point you dealt with fear.
All the time. What's the first step someone needs to take in order to overcome that fear?
Do something you fear. Do something that scares the hell out of you.
So just do it.
So just do it. It's like firewalking, for example. And I remember watching, Oprah Firewalk. And so she was freaking out. I mean, and in fact, if you want to go watch something really cool, go watch Oprah Firewalk, because here's one of the most successful women and successful people on earth. And I mean, she's coming from a place of, remember what she was told when she was young. She was told she would never amount to anything. Why? Because there's three things that was in her way. One, she was a woman. Number two, she was black. And number three, she was from the South. So obviously she didn't pay much attention to what she was told. But even here she is, years later, very successful. She's going through the same challenges everyone does when she has to face a fear. And she's freaking out. And what does Tony say to her? Look, what's the worst that can happen? Burn your feet off and die? I mean, come on. So, and she did it. And then within minutes of her doing her firewalk, she walks off to the side, the cameras follow her, and here's what she says. This is the next chapter, people. And so that's really what it is. When you do something that you fear, and get specific about it. In other words, people say to me all the time, I have a fear of heights. Is it a fear of height or is it a fear of falling? Right? Or is it a fear of falling or is it a fear of dying? So get specific, chunk it down. And again, once you do that, again, do the thing you fear, and the death of fear is certain. It works. And once then you open yourself up, because now, well, maybe I could really start my own business. Maybe I really could have a great marriage. Maybe I really could raise a family. And so again, once you start dealing with your fears and you start, knocking them down, your whole life opens up to you, and the possibilities are limitless.
Nice. Well, Dave, thanks for joining us today. Your insights have been absolutely valuable. We look forward to having you back on the show. Have an awesome day.
Thanks, Thor. My absolute honor, my pleasure. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Question of the day. Where are you allowing fear to stop you from becoming all that you can be? Schedule time in your calendar and come up with an effective strategy to just move forward through the fear, even if you're fearful. Just get started and keep moving. Thank you for listening. If you've not already subscribed to the show, please go to iTunes, subscribe, download the episodes, and then leave us a 5-star rating. Please share these episodes with friends, family, coworkers, or anyone that can benefit from this information. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Thor Conklin. The website is thorconklin.com. Email info@thorconklin.com. While at the website, please sign up for our newsletter for additional tips, tricks, tools, and techniques on how to be a peak performer. Remember, these episodes are anywhere between 6 and 30 minutes, so please use these and listen to them during dot time, doing other things, running, jogging, at the gym, commuting, driving, anything that allows you to do 2 things at once. Decide to be a peak performer in all that you do, and until tomorrow, have an absolutely amazing day.